Hello there. Today we are going to play around a bit with NuxtJS. No music. Okay, let's continue. So NuxtJS, if you go to nuxtjs.org, is all about server rendering or UI rendering, so as to speak. It can provide the server-side rendering, which has to do with making your websites really search engine friendly, making it faster by rendering all the content on the server itself. It can also provide a bunch of utilities on the client side, which has to do with the routing, which has to do with code splitting and so forth. Let's get into the guide and then see whether we have missed out any other points. Yes, certainly it can provide asynchronous data processing. We'll see how in a bit. It also functions as a middleware. It provides easier layouting. So let's take a look at what Nuxt can do by following a very simple example. In the example, we are just going to pull in the news from a news API, which is publicly available, and then just show the power of Nuxt through that particular simple application. We'll see how exactly we can build it forward or take it one level up in subsequent sessions, but for today, that's the objective. To get started, we have, similar to create React app, we have what is called as a create Nuxt app. You can use that as a command line. You can actually download it to your local machines and then run it. Or if you are like me and lazy, you can use npx to do everything in one go. So you just say npx create Nuxt app and then give a name for our application. So this is going to create this folder, and after that it's going to ask a bunch of questions. Let's wait for it. I don't want to spoil the fun. So there, the create Nuxt app has started working its magic. We'll just retain all these configuration parameters as the defaults. I don't really need to provide anything for test applications. Now remember that Nuxt is not really a server-side framework. It is not going to provide you any kind of database connection utilities like an ORM, or it does not really provide you any way of managing all the client connections or create APIs for you. At the same time, Nuxt can integrate really well with all these server-side frameworks. Again, this is out of the box. There may be a bunch of other server-side frameworks, server-side applications that Nuxt can easily integrate with, but at the same time, by using create Nuxt app, you can stitch together the server application. In our case, we are just using a news API, a third-party news API to put something on the front end. We don't really need a server-side application at all. So I am going to say none. For the custom UI framework, you can choose any one of these. I'm just going to choose Vuetify because that's something that I really love. For the rendering mode, it has everything to do with SSR, which I don't really care about particularly in this application. So I'm going to select universal here. You can easily get away with selecting the single page app. In this case, we'll select universal. We need Axios. We are going to use Axios to fetch all the news articles from the third-party website. So I'm going to say yes. I'm not going to use ESLint or Prettier here because I have used that in my VS Code instance itself. But in a production-like environment or in an application where more than one developer can be working on the project, you would want to use these. You would want to maintain same configuration parameters across the machines, across the development machines, so that your code is consistent. I'm going to use yarn or npm, doesn't really matter. I will use npm. Okay, that's done. So it just took around 2 minutes to just install all the dependencies. All those were actually done with node packages in the background, of course. Nothing really magical. I'll go to my directory in which I installed the Nuxt framework. Let me start that up. Server is almost done and my client is going to be done in a while. In the meantime, let's have a look at the newsapi.org. This is a website that provides free APIs for your consumption. There are a few terms and conditions that you can read upon. What I am primarily interested in is looking at some of the APIs that are provided here and then use it or consume the APIs for testing purposes. Once you have signed up, it's going to give you an API key that you can use along with the URL. This is the URL that is going to get me a JSON with all the news articles. Meanwhile, let's check out whether the build is complete. Yes, it is. There you go. Simply amazing how much of this Nuxt does by itself. Let's see how exactly we can customize that. Let's go back to the command line. Take the directory from here, open it in code, and examine the directory structure. Alrighty, so there are a bunch of things here that you may observe. One is the Nuxt config.js. It has the plugin that we installed, Vuetify. It has Axios as a module, and you can create your own plugins and modules as well. And you can also see the mode as universal. We can use a single page app here instead of universal, in which case we are going to just ignore the server-side rendering. Next important part to look at is the layout. So the default.vue actually provides the layout for the application. Whatever the container that you see here between as a Vue template, that is a container that you are going to see here on the browser. So there are a bunch of things that are put here. We are going to remove things that we don't really like or we don't really need. So let's retain the toolbar title and remove the buttons. This toolbar title is coming from vtext, a bound property called title. We go to the script and then look at the data function, and then the title, I'm going to change it to awesome app, or should it be awful? Save it, go back here, it gets refreshed, everything works. So far we have looked at the layout. You can actually see from the navigation bar there are two pages or two views here. This is coming from index.vue and inspire.vue under the pages folder. Let's actually see how easy or how difficult it is to add a new page. What you need to do here is just go to pages directory, create about.vue, which may be our the next page that we want to create. This will be a Vue template. We'll put everything in a container, then say about, put that in a layout, and then say Booker price level content for our about page. So far we have created the about.view, which is a page. We have to go to the default view and then expose this about page in a link. And this is the way we can actually do that. For changing the icons, we can use any icons from the Realize.io website. Let's go back and then choose an icon. So this website is going to give us a bunch of icons that Vuetify exposes for us. You can just choose one of them. We'll say group work, right? Work. Go to about page, the title of about. Let's have a look at how exactly our web application looks right now. You have the new link called about in the navigation bar, and you have the page when you click there. And effective. You don't have to mess around with routing. You don't have to mess around with anything apart from creating the pages, link in the default layout in the navigation bar. But this is not our main function. What we want to do is create another link called news. And then expose a news page in which I'm going to pull in the news information. I am going to use an icon called language, which I already know of, which is going to present a globe-like icon for the news link. All right, save it. It's going to error out right now if you go back and then look at the window, but let's create this and then go back. We put everything in a container, nice looking container. Use the underlying grid system. Let's look at the API once more. The API is going to return us a JSON with status, the results, articles, which comprises of a bunch of elements that includes the source, URL to image, URL, the content itself, along with the title. Great. So let's go here. What we want to do is get the news articles and then present them in the UI in a card format. Let's go to the Vuetify website, go to the documentation, UI components, and navigate to cards. Cards is like panels of Vue. It's very similar to cards and panels, or cards are panels available in Bootstrap. You can look at the various ways in which the cards can be represented. We can choose any one. This looks better. I don't really require this, but again, hey, let's go back, look at what exactly they have to say, and then we can go back and then change them if at all required. So let's copy this entire thing, which is a V card, V layout. It starts with a V layout, then includes a V card, and everything wrapped together in a V flex. All this provides a grid system for your layout, nothing really more. Don't really get too annoyed or agitated. So this is going to give me the card with static content. Let's go back and then see how exactly it looks like in my web application. Edit by web application. All right. Now let's look at how exactly we can bring in the news articles. So far we have just created some dummy information, nothing more. For that we just need to extract the information from the API and put that here. For that we use an async function which is called async data provided by Nuxt. We'll pass app object as the context, and we'll define something called articles, which is going to be extracted from the external API. Okay, this should not really be a variable, just a plain variable, but an object, because it's going to be returned as a JSON object. We have used async already. Now we just need to use await so that the UI is rendered once we have the input back. Await app dot, we'll use Axios here, and then you say get all the information from the URL. Is the URL, go back here and then get it from here. In the normal course of events, what you want to do is just use a library like .env, .env, look it up. You can store all these API keys in a separate file and then pass that information here so that this remains secure. Alrighty, so this is done. This is going to extract all the information in articles object. Now we have the articles. Now we just have to pass it back to the caller. So let's just say return articles, and this should be within the function. Now we have the script to retrieve the articles from an external API. We are just going to use it in our UI. For that, let's go back here. Look at what exactly we have done. We have just used a flex, iterating through all the articles that we have retrieved. The simplest way to do that in Vue is by using v-for. We'll iterate through what? We'll iterate through all the articles. But to iterate through all the articles, we just need two things. One is the article, singular, and then the other part is the index, and we also need to bind index to the key. Save it, it's going to be happy. If you go back to the UI and then have a look, it's going to repeat the hard-coded content with the number of articles that have been retrieved. So we are just using v-for, and that's why this behavior. Let's go back and then fix it. There is also a problem with the layout. We'll fix that as well, coming because of the v layout. Really need the v layout. Let's go back and then change image. If I will want to use the vimg, so the vimg, we have to bind the source, the article, that link again. What's the tag again? Let's find out the tag from here. API of the URL to image. We'll copy that and paste it here. This is going to point towards the image and then render it in our UI. We'll also make the width 100% so that it looks nice. We can also do one more thing. We'll also use the headline to bind our title. Move this. Go have a look at the UI once more. Fresh. All right, so this is how it's going to look. It has an image, it has the title and 2 buttons. Make it a bit more, let's make it a bit more good looking than what it is right now. Say instead of share, we'll say open. Make it right aligned. So the extra button. Also not really have the dynamic transition, but we'll just use the card text, and the card text is bound to, you guessed it, either the content or the description. We take description or content. Title, we have the image, and we have the content. How the application looks. Where is the content? Right. Now we can also make it a bit more card looking, or looking like cards, by introducing a padding here. We'll just say padding bottom and padding of 3. Look much better like a card. One more thing that we can actually do is shift this button to the bottom, and we also need to introduce an action. So what we can do is just open up the news URL in the parent website. Do that. Select this entire thing, move it here. Below the content, find href to article URL. We want to open this up in a new window. So what we can also do is do a target underscore blank, so that it opens up in a new window. Right. So this is it. We have a cool looking news application. You can open the news article in the parent website, and we can also scroll through the news, and that's about it. That's the only thing that you could do. In a real world application, you can tie it back to your accounts or contacts. You can do a bunch of other things, like for example, you can also make this PWA. It's very easy to do in Nuxt. You just have to install a couple of things and you should be good to go. So this is a news application that we want to build and quickly demonstrate the features of Nuxt. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, take care.